Good afternoon. Welcome to Let's Talk About It. I'm Aklima Bibi, your host and a human rights lawyer. Marriage should be a blessing, a joyful moment for a couple to love, honor, and respect from here to eternity. However, that is not the case for many as they are forced into marriage, which is a clear human rights violation. To discuss the issue, I have my special guests. On the first part of the show, I have Borough Commander Pam Sandhu, DCI Sam Faulkner, and Detective Constable Christine Roberts. For the second part of the show, I have Kim So from Immigration Marriage Fraud UK. Let me introduce you to my guests. First, on the left, I have Borough Commander Pam Sandhu. Then I have Christine Roberts, Detective Constable. And then we have Sam Faulkner, DCI. Welcome to the show.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Pam, I wanted to know a bit more about yourself, and same with you, Christine, and Sam as well. Do you want to tell me a bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm a borough commander in West London, in Richmond. I've been there just over a year, but I've been working in the Metropolitan Police for 28 years now. And during that time, I've dealt with a variety of different issues, cases, honour-based violence, forced marriages, and also FGM. And it's a subject that we all feel very, very passionate about, and it's something that we can all make a difference in. And that's why the three of us are here today. So if I pass you on to Christine to give you...
Yes, please. Christine, go ahead.
Hi, Aklima. I'm Christine Roberts, and I work in a central position, if you like, more or less. I'd call myself like a SPOC, a single point of contact for officers within the Metropolitan Police who will approach me to ask advice of matters of forced marriage and honour-based abuse. And I also deal with keeping the officers informed of changes to legislation.
Okay.
And I also work with a lot of partnership agencies and organisations, all to do with forced marriage.
So you're very passionate about the issues and keeping our community safe. What about you, Sam?
Hello, I'm Sam Faulkner. I'm a Detective Chief Inspector in the Met Police. I've got the best part of 29 years service, most of which has been operationally based in the east of London. But I'm currently responsible for what we call public protection in London, which is all issues such as honour-based violence and forced marriage and domestic abuse, hate crime, missing people and so on. And so I have a central role based at Scotland Yard.
A very important role as well. This issue of forced marriage. I have a question, to be honest with you. Very important question is, what exactly is forced marriage? Sam, do you want to tell us that? I mean, Christine, you probably have experience as well. I mean, please do join in. What exactly is it? I just want to know the definition of forced marriage.
Well, it's quite simply, it's what it says in the title, really. It's a marriage that you're forced against your will. It's not an arranged marriage. That's entirely different. Arranged marriage is part of a society in many parts of the world, but forced marriage is entirely different. It's when the two parties or one party has been forced against their will to enter into a marriage.
I do think that we need to just clarify that point, because culturally within our communities, where marriages are arranged with permission and with respect to the individuals involved, this is a huge difference. This is not an arranged marriage, this is a forced marriage. So in our communities, we quite often arrange marriages. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think we need to make that very clear to the people who may be watching this show, that there's nothing wrong with arranging a marriage, but it's just as long as the people involved actually want to marry each other. They want to get married and they want to marry each other. Yep. So I think we need to make that very clear.
Yeah, the arranged marriage, as I understand it, somebody probably say, oh, well, I haven't got the time to go and look for my partner. Can the families, or friends or introducer find me a potential suitor, and then obviously then they decide. Then it's like a matchmaking, isn't
Yes,
it?
yeah.
Whereas forced marriage is actually forcing someone against it, as you mentioned.
Well, that's
earlier.
right. Arranged marriage, all parties agree, and it happens in all cultures, across society, in lots of different countries, and it's an acceptable form of marriage. Whereas forced marriage, one or both parties are against the marriage, and by means of coercion or other means, or by committing criminal offences in many ways, people are forced to marry for a whole host of reasons.
Right, okay. Why is it happening? I mean, this is 21st century England, why is it happening? Can you put
It's an interesting question. It's one that we ask ourselves quite often. But what we've seen, I think the team will back me up on this, is that it's happening to young people. So it's young people between 15.
It's on the
15 and
increase.
20.
Is it on the increase? Have I got it right?
It does.
I've read somewhere.
It's on the increase in the sense that in the pure numbers. If you take, say, the forced marriage unit statistics, it's over 300 last year in London alone, and in terms of police figures, it's just under 200. But there's lots of reasons why it may be on the increase. It may be that we're getting better at reporting it. People have got the confidence to come forward to report that, and we're trying to get to the real picture. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that it's on the increase. It's how you interpret the figures.
Right, okay. Then I'm coming back to my question again. Why is it happening? It's 21st century England. Why is it happening?
That's a difficult question for us
That
to
is a
answer.
challenging question. I think if you look at some of the people that are involved, I think there are parents who feel that they're doing a good thing. For example, somebody with some physical disabilities.
Okay.
So the parents sometimes feel that when they become, deceased, who will look after that child for me?
Okay.
However, what they're overlooking is that their intention may be good,
Okay.
but underneath they're not really allowing their child the freedom to make that choice themselves. They're making the choice for them.
Okay.
So
Could the parents be pressured?
Absolutely.
Pam, you mentioned that it's a cultural issue. And I've sort of understood that it's nothing to do with religion. All the mainstream religion forbids forced marriage.
That's correct.
Christianity, Islam and Judaism and so on. They
Very
completely forbid. So it's more cultural issues. And as Christian...
There are issues with the communities in that sometimes parents know it's not the right thing for their children. However, they're pressurised by their own community in actually making those decisions to force their kids into marriages that are really not suitable. And sometimes it could be that maybe they see their child, and it could be a son or a daughter, because it happens to males and females, and it could be that they've become too westernised, or they're dressing in a particular way, and the family or the community don't think it's acceptable. And so it's been, in some situations, it's being used as a form of control. And that's where we've got to get involved, and we've got to highlight that there are other ways, and it's educating our communities, but it's also educating our young people to say there is help available for them. There are people such as us, there's social workers, there's people like yourself in the legal professions, and there are options for them, but it's trying to get that message out to the individuals to say we are here to help. And it's what we'll try and do is we'll try and look at that individual and put that individual at the centre of all of our actions.
Okay.
So it's not always about prosecution, is it? It's
No,
about
not
what's
at all.
best for that
Not at
individual.
all. Sorry, if I can go back to the figures again.
Okay.
There's lots of ways that people choose to share the experience or the threat of forced marriage. They may go to friends, or they may go to charities of different organisations. So the true figure is almost likely to be much more than what we've got recorded, of course. But part of that is it's all about awareness for me. It's awareness raising. Now, awareness raising obviously is two ways. It's in the public, it's for communities. It's also inside the police service as well. So we do an awful lot over the last few years to raise awareness in the police service.
Okay.
So we'll have special, for example, there'll be specific training days for first line response officers, specialist training for investigators, and most importantly, we have a cohort of specialist investigators to report offences such as this, And in London, they're based in the community safety units. Every London borough's got one, 32 units across the capital, almost 1,000 officers specially trained, dedicated to domestic abuse, honour-based violence, forced marriage and hate crime and related issues. So that's a big step forward, I think, in raising awareness and showing to the public and to victims that we're treating this very seriously.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to actually ask as well, young people are quite vulnerable. Forced marriage, they're not actually, it's not an element of physically being forced. There are other ways, like emotionally blackmailed as well.
Yeah.
Now, for a young child, under 15, under 18, when they are emotionally blackmailed by their own family, it makes it very difficult. How do we actually tackle that? Because it's wrong. And an individual or parent is actually emotionally blackmailed in order to force a child to get married. What do you say about that? I mean,
it's important as well that we recognise it as a crime. We recognise it as a form of abuse. It's child abuse, and that child. As soon as that child may start to show signs that I don't want this for me, and starts rebelling against the wishes of the parents, then it can change where the child may then be pressurised, coerced, or even physically assaulted. So we have other crimes that may potentially start happening to that child. So it is child abuse.
It is. It's very difficult for a child. I mean, the other thing is, it will be difficult for somebody a youngster to come forward because for very various reasons. Fear. Where do I go? Will I get the help? Do I go to my teacher? Do I go to my? How do they actually? I suppose it's kind of empowering them. What would be the message, to a youngster? Let's say they don't want to go ahead, but they don't know where or how to get help. Do you have any message for those youngsters?
Well, for children, schools and colleges and universities, they have safeguarding leads.
Okay.
So the child or the young person can approach their safeguarding lead within the school. But also there's a lot of charitable agencies, or I call it agencies, I mean organisations, who are women who have been through very similar situations, who can offer advice, because it may be that the young person just wants advice on what are his or her options. And may not actually want to go to the police initially, but may want support from somebody who they feel will understand their position and perhaps talk through the next stages.
Can I just add something there? Because we're not going to talk about specific charities or specific organisations, but there is one umbrella organisation called Our Girl, which encompasses a number of charities. So it's not one particular charity. It's an umbrella organisation, and they're internet-based. So you can actually, so if there's any young person who's watching this today who just wants to have a look at what's available, what support mechanisms there are, and what is actually an offence. Because when we talk about offences and we talk about child abuse and we talk about honour-based violence, there's a whole host of different types of offences. But if any of these young people have a look at Our Girl, it will give them some insight into what
when
is
it says Our Girl, is it specifically for girls or boys?
It's for
because a lot of young men are suffering the same thing.
And we recognise that this is something that's being perpetrated against young boys as well as young girls. But the organisation encompasses a lot of different charities. It's right across across the UK. But it's just a site where you go for information. It's like Google. It's like
so it's on your fingertips. Basically, all the help and advice is available. If you really want to don't suffer in silence. If you do need help, seek help. There is plenty available.
That's a really good point, actually. But don't leave it too late, because if you suspect you're about to become the victim of forced marriage, or indeed if you are involved in the forced marriage, come forward to those institutions we've described or to the police service and make it known, because you can get help. There's lots of avenues of help available to you.
Can I just make one more point as well? In that, when we come across these individuals, prosecution isn't always the right option.
So I was going to come to that.
So I just
right.
wanted to say that if there's anybody out there, we as police officers, we are not going to lock up your parents.
Okay.
So
yes.
if there's another option, and that is removing that person or assisting them into a different location or helping them move schools, colleges,
Yes.
homes, anything
Yes.
like that, it's not about locking up their parents. Please don't think that if you come forward that your parents are going to be locked up. That we will look at what is best for you as an individual, and that's the action we'll take.
So the best interest of the individual is at the paramount. Basically,
Yes.
it's a priority for the police
Yes.
or the law
Yeah.
or the authorities.
It's what they
Yes.
want to do, but they have to make that decision themselves, and they have to come
Yeah.
forward
Yeah.
and ask for the help, ask for the advice. Go on the internet, or come to us, and we will put them in touch with the right people. And as Sam has mentioned, we have dedicated community safety units, and we have social workers embedded within those community safety units who assist, and they will look at all sorts of education, housing, health. They'll look at the whole host of support mechanisms that are available for each young person that's been involved.
Right. Okay.
So in summary, Aklima,
Mm.
the person, whether it's a young child or a middle-aged man or woman, your safety is absolutely paramount. And we as the police service will listen to you, take whatever you tell us very seriously. We will conduct our own risk assessment on what you tell us and help you to plan your future. And we are there, and we are willing to support young people, whatever their age, and with whatever gender. And I know that we've picked up on, the female gender, but it's really clear that there are also male victims and from different communities, and that it's also, violence against women and girls, but that covers violence against men.
It's a
and
clear
boys.
criminal offence, violation of their human rights.
Can I just make one more point though? Because when we do come across offences where it's a clear violence or criminal offence, then those people will be prosecuted. So this isn't let anything can happen, and we're just going to look at getting these individuals out and safe. If there are clear criminal offences, they will be acted on. They will be taken further.
And just to build on that point, I mean, that's something that we've taken forward as the Met Police on behalf of Palm. We've gone across the country, a joint training with the Crown Prosecution Service to raise awareness of these offences, because London suffers a percentage of offences, but of course some other parts of the United Kingdom may not suffer so much. So we raise awareness with prosecutors and police alike across the UK as part of our national obligation to support the national strategy against gender-based violence and forced marriage.
Right. Okay. We kind of like touching on forced marriage before it happens. What happens if if an individual undergoes, then realizes, and then they want to escape? What can they do on that one? A lot of the times, or a number of times we've heard or we've seen that they are taken back to the country of origin. They get married. How can they actually? What about the forced marriage unit? And do you want to tell us a bit more about the forced marriage unit, and then we can go on about how the rescue missions? Yeah.
So if you're talking about somebody who has been forced into a marriage, there is protective measures and protective orders that we as the police and the victim themselves can actually apply for, go to court, which will offer some form of protection, i.e. there can be prohibitions attached to that order, such as if there's any intimidation or any violence or threats going on. Because if you're forced into marriage, then things are happening to you that
Is that
are against
called the
your
forced
will.
Marriage Protection Order?
It's called the Forced Marriage Protection Order, yeah. So you might hear the term FMPO. But it's a Forced Marriage Protection Order. And basically that will give the young person or older person the security and the knowledge to know that they are being offered some protection, whether to stop them being taken out of the country. So there can be, and the way we would deal with it from the police service is we would look at what prohibitions, what restrictions will suit you as an individual.
All right, okay.
So, because everybody's going to be different, everybody's set of circumstances are going to be very different.
Okay.
But it's important to know that the new legislation, the forced marriage legislation that came out in 2014, that and it's the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act.
Okay.
It came out in 2014, and it's a very good piece of legislation because it tells people that forced marriage is a criminal offence,
Okay.
and it created any breaches of a forced marriage protection order is a
Right.
criminal act.
Okay. And anyone can take that out?
And
Or any,
the
the victim themselves.
If we use
Yeah.
or the complainant,
Okay.
they can go to court, or they can have a friend, like a solicitor or a teacher, support them and go to court with them, or that
Okay.
it can be taken out through the police service, or it can be taken out if you're under 18 and you have an allocated social worker.
Okay.
You can go with your social worker.
It's
Sam, yeah.
it's a very powerful tool in the toolbox against the number of options we've got against forced marriage.
Okay.
But if I can just sort of go back to the forced marriage unit, which I think was set up in 2005 by the government.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we work very closely with Forced Marriage Unit, as do most police, or all police services. They work with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. They're part of that, and work with the Home Office to fight against forced marriage. Very, very strong partners. A lot of people report forced marriage to them. I've worked with them very closely, not just around policies and partnership working with forced marriage, but also operationally in the past to rescue people who have been victims of forced marriage abroad. So if you
How
are,
does that happen? You know,
well, because they've got consulate, you've got British consulates across the globe. They've all got contact with them. They form. They do what they can obviously within the rule of law to alleviate the situation, and in many cases rescue people, for want of a better word, from the situation and back to the UK. So we work very closely with them. And they're a very, very good unit to contact if you feel, or if you're about to become a victim, or indeed you are a victim of forced marriage anywhere in the world.
Okay. I just wanted to, how would the forced marriage unit know? For example, let's say somewhere in a remote part of a country abroad, how will an individual contact the forced marriage unit? How, or arrange for the rescues or escape? How can they do that? How easy is it to access the British diplomatic missions or the forced marriage unit?
Well, there's no easy answer or straightforward solution, but you contact your forced marriage unit by any number of means. By email, by telephone, if you're abroad, through the British consulate, through any method you can.
What about friends in the UK? Suppose maybe the individual or the potential victim contacts the friend or a relative here in the UK. Would they be able to contact the forced marriage unit and
They would do, but I put her on sort of caution with that, because in many of these situations, relatives might be complicit in some sort of conspiracy to commit the forced marriage. So be very, very careful before you involve your relatives. That's not to say very close friends might not be able to do that, but if you can, I would recommend you go to the police or to one of those institutions, or directly to the forced marriage unit in the first case, rather than relatives or friends.
Right, okay. So
it would have to be, it would have to be somebody that person knew was a completely trusted friend.
Okay.
The challenge with using a family member is that there could be, even if they want to support the individual,
there's
and
a
the
risk.
family find out,
Okay.
they could put pressure on that family member.
So they could put themselves in more risk.
So by approaching the police or the forced marriage unit, there could be also strategies put in place, because sometimes you may think that you're going abroad. You're a bit nervous about a forced marriage happening, but you're not. You've been reassured by your family, and you're accepting to believe
Everything's going to be okay.
that everything's going to be all right. But if you are if you fear that you may have a forced marriage happen to you, then it's really important that at that point you do come to the police, or you do come to the forced marriage unit to go through your options. So, for instance, have you got a trusted friend? that if you suddenly don't come back from the holiday that you've been told that you're going on, that in, let's say, 2 weeks' time you're not back, then that friend can then start to either alert the police, alert the forced marriage unit to act on your behalf to protect you.
Even at the airport, if you feel you're in doubt, you can seek help. You know, at the airport, you can be stopped, or you can go and approach someone and say, "Look, I don't want to go ahead."
Yeah, you can seek help at any point, and even if you have been taken out of the country, you can still seek help. But what the big thing, one of the things that we've done is we've done a bit of analysis on this, and normally people are told there's a family holiday, a family wedding, or a person who's ill abroad, and that they're going abroad to see that ill, nanny or grandparent. And that's where they're taken out under false pretenses and then married. So that individual might think it's too late, they can't get back in the country, but it's not. And in some of the countries, they may not even trust the local police, because the police in this country are very different to the police in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. But if they can get a message to the British consulate or a teacher in this country or the forced marriage unit or anything, whether it's by phone call, email, or however they do it, or even the teaching staff, teachers at schools, then that will be taken seriously, and there will be questions asked abroad about how that person got there and why they're there. So it's never too late. It's if you're taken out of this country and you're abroad, it's not too late to seek help. And even at the point of departure at the airport, you can still get that help as long as you ask for it. But you do have to ask, and then you do have to try and work out what is the best solution for you.
Right. What about those people who actually undergo forced marriages? And that comes back to my question again. Why is it happening? Is it because they're taken back to their own country? Is it to keep their culture because they're becoming West, or is it because of more commercial reasons, as I call it, visas?
I don't. Number of reasons.
Is it number of reasons? I don't know whether it's in the community, I've kind of heard that a lot of these forced marriages happen because seeking an entry to the UK, a visa to the UK or a British passport.
Well, I think we're seeing some evidence of that. I think if you talking about adult services, for instance, on London boroughs, you'll see that perhaps young men with, say, learning difficulties and so on may be forced into marriage because of that very reason, around visas. It's an adult safeguarding issue as well, around protection of people. So there's some evidence of that.
Right. And again, by talking to the forced marriage unit and their caseworkers, they can work with the individual to work through any faults or pressurised visa applications or spousal visa applications. It's all about the young person or the older person, male or female, just having the confidence to speak out about something that shouldn't be happening to them. And with that confidence, don't feel embarrassed, don't feel ashamed, don't hold the burden of your family on your shoulders of what their expectations are of you. Know that it's a crime in the UK and feel confident that you have the right to talk about something that you don't want to happen to you.
And should the burden be on an individual, or should the burden be on the communities as well, whatever community, whatever the background, that this is a crime in their community and they should step up and they should do something about it as well?
It's not always as obvious as that, because even with domestic violence, the neighbours may hear something, they may not hear something, but until the individual actually acknowledges that this is going on, it may not be picked up by neighbours or the community. But additionally, we've also got people where sexuality is an issue, who are being forced into marriage. You've got a lot of people who may be gay who are being forced into marriages that they do not want to be a part of. And it doesn't matter what the reason is, but they are being forced into something that they shouldn't be a party to. But our communities don't always pick that up. They're not always aware. And if they are aware, sometimes our community is involved in that behaviour and are complicit in organising forced marriages and actually going along with supporting that forced marriage. So that there's a variety of issues, but that's a social a social issue which is embedded in the background of our communities who came into this country.
Okay.
And there's all sorts of influences from going to school, colleges, universities, and there's a clash. There's a clash of communities, culture, and it isn't. It's got nothing to do with religion. Absolutely nothing.
And obviously, forced marriage is a crime. Again, it's a crime, and it should not be happening. Especially on British soil, you know,
that's right.
We have to try and stop this. Also, forced marriage is not just a forced marriage that it's happened, that's the end of it, is it? It leads to so many other issues, isn't it? Domestic violence, child neglect. Sam, you know, you've done some of the investigations, you know, I've read in the papers as well. Share some of the stories. Obviously, you can't discuss the case, but I'm sure you can share some of the stories.
I mean, just very broadly, I mean, forced marriage and its linkage with so-called honour-based violence are terms that are used, you know, in common usage now, but they hide most of the most serious criminal offences known to our statute books. For example, murder, rape, kidnapping, all sorts of horrible offences. And I've been involved in the investigation of these offences, and quite clearly there are real dangers here with forced marriage and honour-based violence. So that is why it's been when you investigate, when you deal with potential victims, you must exercise the utmost caution of who you trust with information. We've touched upon no one case is the same. No one case is the same. Everyone's got a different bespoke solution. There's lots of barriers to reporting forced marriage. We've touched upon one. I think Palmer just said there about criminalising parents. No one's wishing to criminalise parents unnecessarily, but sometimes you have to criminalise people because we are committing very serious offences. But there's no one straight solution. And as I've touched upon previously in this interview, I've been involved with having people rescued in Pakistan and other countries with the forced marriage unit. Very much a bespoke solution to what you're dealing with. But I just want to take the opportunity, if I can, just to say that please have the confidence to come forward. If you think for a moment that you might be a victim, or you may have been entered into a forced marriage, please come forward and share that with someone in trust, one of the charities, the police service, and so on, British Police Service, because we're here to help you with that, and no one should be made to live that life. Of course, ultimately, it may end in more serious consequences for that person. So, you know, it's a very, very, very serious subject.
It's also important to point out that we will not mediate with family members, that we will work with you and we will be open with you with what actions we want to take next. And so, because I know that people are afraid that, you know, once they've come to the police, especially the police, that the family may see that as a crime in itself.
Right, okay.
So we're aware of that. So we will not be going back to your family and trying to build bridges or, you know, support the family against your wishes.
Right,
it's really important to stress that we do realise that,
That's right.
you know, with the forced marriage element, lots of other things could be happening to you as an individual.
I think also, as police officers, we do recognise the huge difference between domestic violence and forced marriages and honour-based violence. Because with a domestic violence situation, you've only got one perpetrator. It's either, you know, the partner, husband, wife, whoever it is, whichever way around it is. But with honour-based violence and forced marriages, you have multiple perpetrators. So you could have mum, dad, auntie, uncle. You could have grandparents. You've got the whole family and sometimes the members of the community involved, which is why we're very, very careful in protecting data as well. So that if a person comes to us and we assist them in moving on, we will not provide information about where that person's moved on to. We will protect them as far as we can possibly protect them, and we will not give information to aunties, uncles, cousins who say that they're worried about them, so that individual is completely encompassed in a safety mechanism.
Right, okay. And what about the police force around the country? Are they equipped? Are they trained to deal with the issue of forced marriage?
There's always more to do.
Okay.
But we are in a much better place than when I joined the organisation, when we all joined. But the training is ongoing. But because you've got more and more officers who are from diverse communities, that knowledge and understanding is being fed into the organisation. And then you've got subject matter experts such as Christine, Sam, and then there's training mechanisms. So we're actually training our officers to identify. And one of the big things that we've really worked hard on is you have to believe that individual. When they first come, you've only ever that one. It's the one chance rule. They come to you.
Coming to that, sorry to disturb you. I've had sort of charity organisations as well, and I've had sort of first-hand experience or information from individuals saying the police, they sometimes tiptoe on cultural issues. They don't want to listen to us. What's the point of going to the police? I don't think I'm going to be helped because I don't have evidence. I've never, I don't have bruises anymore. I'm mentally being. What message can you give on that one? Because police, the message, police are tiptoeing on cultural issues. That's quite a negative.
I'd like to put that challenge back, because if you look at any one of our teams now on any borough, you will find that team is diverse. I was saying to the others, when I first joined the organisation, I was the only woman. I worked at Bethnal Green and Tower Hamlets. I was the only woman on the whole of my team. And then gradually over time more women joined, then more black people, Asian people, people from Pakistan, people from Bangladesh. And if you look at any team, any response team who's coming out to deal with the calls, you will find diversity. There is no team that hasn't got diversity now. And because when we talk about tiptoeing around cultural issues, the culture is within our teams. We're there. And I still go out on patrol with my teams. And I went to an issue quite recently where I was able to use my language and my knowledge of my own community to actually persuade a lady to tell the truth. To tell the truth about what had actually happened to her. And it's a big difference. If you stand on the outside and say, people don't understand me, they don't know what I'm going through, that is just so wrong. That is just so wrong.
So the clear message is, it's not going to happen. You may be failed at some point, but there's always help. If somebody, if you feel that you've been let down by the police, there's go to the next level. Always seek. Okay, I didn't get help on this one. There must be somebody else. I'm going to put in, request someone else to deal with my case.
But when we talk about failing, as in the police failing, that shouldn't be happening.
It shouldn't be happening at all. Full stop.
And nowadays, with the kind of training and the kind of intrusive supervision, body-worn video, everything is recorded. So it shouldn't. We shouldn't have individuals who are being failed. And if there is a failure, then you need to take it further and say, look, I went to police on this occasion and nothing was done about it. But in this day and age, I would be very surprised, and I'd be quite hurt if there's an individual who's been sent away 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Yes, we are going to have those horror stories.
Not this day and age.
I think it'd be shocking now. And officers will lose their jobs. They know that if they don't do what they're supposed to do and what they're paid to do, and they don't take it seriously, words cannot describe how I feel at the moment. Just cannot describe it.
The job is challenging, but there to help and protect the public, and that's their priority.
We all sign up to protect our communities. Everything else is secondary.
That's right. I mean, just to reiterate what Palmer says, we've come on leaps and bounds in the organisation over the last 10, 20 years. We've got, as I mentioned before, community safety units on every borough. When they're specially trained and know what to look for, how to investigate offences like this. Nationally, there's similar things in place. We train frontline responders. So the objective being that if you walk into any police station or you contact the police, or however you contact the police, they know what to do. There's always going to be extra work to do. It's always going to be extra work to do. And we're all very conscious of the fact that crimes such as this or incidences such as this are underreported. But really it's about, one of our jobs really is to get the confidence for people to come forward, for victims to come forward. There's big complicated issues with barriers to reporting. We've touched upon communities, and as we've said, communities sometimes probably don't even know about the offences. They may even be complicit in the offences. And I think there's a feeling, there is this situation where communities can defeat crime per se, across the board. If we all work towards defeating crime, we will do it. But sometimes issues such as this are very complex. So the message has got to be, have the confidence to come forward. I would really hope, and I agree with Palm entirely, I'd be very disappointed in this day and age if you go into a London police station or contact the police and you'll be let down.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that I've just taken over as the lead on the forced marriage issue and honour-based violence for the whole of London.
Right.
And Christine and I have just set up a meeting group, which we started back in January. And we've got various charities, we've got the health service, we've got
some lawyers,
we've got the forced marriage unit, we've got the Home Office, we've got all sorts of representatives that are coming to these meetings regularly, so that if there are situations where our policies or our procedures are failing individuals, because what we've done is we've given access to our policies and how to deal with these issues and how we're training people to these groups to say, what are the unintended consequences? What can we do better? And we're always going to have stuff that we're always going to have room for improvement. But we are actually looking and challenging and saying, tell us what we can do better. Tell us where we failed. Or is this policy not actually fit for use? And if it is, tell us what's wrong with it and what we can do about it. And we've actually given access to all of our paperwork to these groups to say, feed it back in.
Okay, but as well as these charity groups, individuals can come forward, through the internet, online, phones.
And that was a point, actually, that I was going to make, because whilst Palm and Sam have been talking, I've also been thinking of the other angle, that people that don't have access to the internet or difficulties, or even that English isn't their first language, that I'm really pleased that this show will hopefully reach them.
Okay.
Because I also know from previous cases where the perpetrator, whether it be the spouse or the spouse's family, they try to use coercion of a victim by saying that the police service is like where you've come from, say for argument's sake, somewhere in Asia, that the police will not believe you.
Well, they listen to the men. I've heard that before. They will listen to the men.
So incorrect. It's wrong information. The police in the United Kingdom, wherever you are in the country, will listen to you. The comparison that the police in the United Kingdom is the same as the police that may have members in the police service abroad that actually are in favour of the perpetrator.
Okay.
We hope very much that you will not have that experience in the United Kingdom. That when you come to us, it's in confidence. We will take you very seriously. We will speak to you alone, not with family members. We will not mediate with the family. We will not involve them. And then we will work through a strategy or like a safeguarding plan to make sure that you are kept safe. We understand, as Palm said earlier, that you may not wish to have your parents prosecuted, but you want it to stop. And you want any further abuses, whether it be verbal, emotional or physical, you want that to stop.
Is that in order to get in order for it to stop, is that the forced marriage protection order? Is it safe to get that? How does it stop? Is the police going to stop, or you have to actually get legal?
It doesn't necessarily, because maybe the forced marriage protection order is not needed on some occasions. Maybe it is needed on other occasions, and that's what, why we're saying, you've got to come forward if you feel this duress, this pressure, this external pressure, whether it be coming from your immediate family, your extended family, and the community. We want you to just feel that there is somebody here that will listen to you.
And obviously the forced marriage protection order provides,
I mean, it can be for us to have your passport so that you can't be taken out of the country, or a copy of your passport, but we can then discuss with you how you go on to keep your most precious documents safe. So there's nothing, what I'm trying to get across in the most easiest way, there's nothing to be lost by speaking out and having the confidence and knowing that there's loads of information on the internet if you
available for you to access help and assistance.
Yes.
Okay. And another important thing, Christine, you probably know more. If you are trapped or stuck abroad, sometimes I had a call once saying, "I don't have my passport. Somebody's taken it away." That doesn't matter. You're a British citizen. It's your duty, and travel documents will be arranged for you to travel back to the UK. Is that? Am I right in that?
Yeah, all through the British Consulate and where you are. Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to say, Pam?
I was just going to say we're really grateful for the opportunity to come today to try and speak to as many people as possible, because this is a subject that is being taken very, very seriously by the Metropolitan Police, by other police forces across the country as well. But it's something that we're not going to leave. It's not going to just stop here. We are continuously improving, and any person that comes to us in confidence will get the service they deserve, and everyone has a right to be believed, and that's the focus that we have on this particular topic.
Okay, what about Sam? Have you got any?
I think really just to say what I've said before, if you're watching this programme and you fear you're going to be a victim of a forced marriage, or you're in a forced marriage, then please have the confidence to come forward and seek help. There's always a solution. There's help always available, and we'll make sure that we make that happen. So please come forward.
What about you, Christine?
Gosh, I think it's all been said, but just reinforcing that your safety is paramount and that there are options for you. There are officers that are dedicated to safeguarding, and we will believe you. I think that's the biggest thing. I think knowing that if you come to the police or if you go to any of the other organisations, whether it be our statutory partners or the many regulated charity organisations, that you will be believed and people will be just only too willing to help you to keep you safe.
Thank you all for coming to the show. We're going to take a short break. After the break, we'll be joined by Kim So from Immigration Marriage Fraud UK. So don't go away. Welcome back. I have with me Kim So from Immigration Marriage Fraud UK, who will be discussing further about forced marriage and the other issues which raises from forced marriage. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay. Before the break, we were talking about forced marriage with the Metropolitan Police officers. However, forced marriage is not just a forced marriage. It leads to other things. One of the big issue is the commercial gain relating to forced marriage. Kim, do you want to explain, how does that happen?
Yes, I think many people are being too sensitive and not actually looking at the financial aspect of a forced marriage or an immigration marriage fraud. What is happening is that families are spending money to get people into the UK and also receiving money for bringing people into the UK. And we're talking about many thousands, many tens of thousands of pounds in some cases. And this negotiation is happening away from the victim who is going to be married off. Also, introducers have a part to play in this. They're also receiving money for arranging the marriages. So it has become an industry. Now, if the person was to have carried this out in the UK, it would be described as a sham marriage and they would be prosecuted. But actually what is happening is that this is one of the reasons why we have an issue that has got completely out of control.
But sometimes what happens is, the issue of forced marriage, it could be that the parents think that they know what's best for their child, so they probably choose a suitor. A lot of them, it could be, the first cousins or, extended family members. So it's not always commercial gain. How is that commercial gain? It could be the best interest of their child, as they're thinking.
Yes, but unless you are doing this, having been educated, which is why I'm on the programme today, you do not understand the pitfalls of what is happening. Now, for instance, give you an example. One mother contacted me from the Pakistani community, and their child had severe learning difficulties. She was unable to live independently on her own. And the father had decided that she was going to have an arranged marriage. And so they made her marry somebody from Pakistan. However, this is where it gets interesting. So it was an arranged marriage. It wasn't forced as in, I'm going to hit you if you don't marry.
Okay.
But it was forced by the family, and the daughter, who, as I said, had severe learning difficulties, was more than happy to marry because this was her opportunity to marry.
So it was actually an arranged marriage, but how does the force element comes into it?
Because the family were forcing her to marry, and she was not of the competence to understand what was actually happening.
So she did not have the mental capacity
to decide
for herself?
No. Okay. No, she just wanted to get married, as most girls, whatever intellectual ability they are, would say they wanted to do. So she was coerced into marrying, and money changed hands.
Okay.
And the person came over from Pakistan, and the mother had great misgivings about what was going on and had explained how vulnerable her daughter was. The next thing that happened was that the new husband took the girl to live in the north of England and basically kept her as a slave, made her do every bit of housework there was, gave her no independence, took her disability allowance, didn't feed her other than a few Mars bars, until the family realised what had gone on, and they were able to kidnap this girl away from the husband. But the husband had got what he wanted, and that was he had got into the UK. And this
was that before he get, because you get first you get limited leave to remain, and then you get the ILR.
No, first you get the spousal visa. And the spousal visa lasts for 2.5 years. Okay. Then you need the support of the spouse in order for it to become an indefinite leave to remain.
Right, okay.
Now, if the spouse is to say that the marriage is broken down before then, that is supposed to mean that it is considered for terminating the spousal visa, and they are deported. Unfortunately, you have to have very strong grounds, and you must not have children, otherwise the Human Rights Act kicks in, and unfortunately this means that people remain in the UK even though they are bad people. But I want to go back a little bit in the conversation. I think we've got to start by understanding what immigration marriage fraud is, a term that is used by the Americans, the Canadians, the Australians, and those in New Zealand. And it covers a wide spectrum of fraud. However, the European Commission has recently decided to categorise a particular kind of fraud by the name marriages of deception. And this is where people are being deceived into being married. Now, this can be a deception that can stem from the family arranging the marriage. It can be a deception because of the introducer who's putting the marriage together. It can be a deception because one party has no intent of staying in the marriage at all.
Right,
And it
okay.
can be a deception at a much deeper level to do with their identity, their criminal record, their marital relationships,
Okay.
even to the CVs that they may produce and the false qualifications.
Okay.
So this is what we mean by the term marriages of deception. Now, to give you an example, our organisation was started by Deline Allouane, and she had gone to Tunisia where she was introduced to a very charming, good-looking young man, and he persuaded her that he loved her, and he persuaded her to marry. And so she brought him into the UK. And behind her back, because his intent was never to remain married at all, he had taken another wife in Tunisia, where it must be said, in Tunisia, that is not allowed. Bigamy is a criminal offence in Tunisia.
Right.
You have a financial fine and you are put in prison. So even though he was a Muslim, in that country, you are not allowed to take another wife. So he took this other wife, he brought her into the UK. He then falsified documents and ended up taking her properties in Tunisia. Now, she found out, which is why the organisation started, that actually there was nobody in the UK who could help her. Neither the Home Office nor the police. In fact, it was like a game of football, and she felt that her head was being used as the football, kicked around between the two posts. And so she started the organisation because she suddenly realised that there were other people who'd also got caught. Now, I myself got caught. So I joined forces with her about 3 years ago to start to research what was happening internationally, to start seeing what other countries were dealing with it.
When did the organisation start?
Over 6 years ago now.
6 years ago.
Yeah, we have a
Okay.
website and a Facebook site, and we exist to research, support victims, and campaign to get changes in the law and to get the authorities to address. Now, that's taken us down some very interesting roads because we've linked with all the other international groups.
Okay.
And there are certain profiles of fraudsters that we are seeing across the world. And a lot depends on where the fraudsters are actually coming from. Now, I mentioned what happened to Deline. That's a fraud that since 1982 has been called business. Now, business is from the word business because that is what it is. It is a business. This is an incredibly lucrative way of making money. You get the passport and you get the property in the divorce and you get any other financial gain you can during the marriage.
Once you come over to the UK.
Once you come over to the UK. Now in West Africa, another fraud was raising its head. Probably about the late 90s when the Gambia became a tourist destination for the British.
Okay.
The game also involves bigamy or polygamy without consent, has other slightly different features, but the aim ultimately is to get the passport, get as much money from the victim as possible, and to bring in the existing family that they have, because that's the major difference. With business, the fraudsters tend to marry after, and with the game from West Africa, they're already married before they marry.
British citizens are being targeted, or they are praised for these people.
Yes, they're being targeted. Now, then we found that there was a particular pattern of what was happening in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. And when it gets interesting is when you start to understand the migration routes and what is actually happening. Now, we were all aware of the jungle in Calais. Well, that would be all different nationalities coming together, and they would be talking about what are the best ways to get into the UK. How can you secure your immigration status? And they were sharing knowledge about the techniques that were used. So they would know exactly who to target, what type of victim, what kind of words to use. In fact, it became so organized that websites were uncovered with the techniques to use. And the one from West Africa said that actually you've got a 23% chance of getting into the UK if you target these women, right?
Is it mainly women?
It's mainly women, but we are seeing an increase in men now.
Okay.
Now, when we started looking at the Bangladesh, Pakistan and India cultures, we came across a couple of frauds. One we call the Nikah frauds. And these are...
Is that the Nikah Nama, as we understand it? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these are where the person is already married in their home countries, who have come over to the UK, perhaps they are students, perhaps they're on work permits, or perhaps they've never come to the UK, but they're purporting to be single back home.
Okay.
Yeah? And then they marry the British citizen and they get into the UK and they get their immigration status. So they get what's called the spousal visa, which lasts for 2.5 years.
Okay.
Now, they have to hide this existing wife. And the only way that they can do this...
Existing wife with whom they left back to their own country.
And the only way they can do this is by controlling the situation.
Right.
And they do that through coercive control, and they do that through domestic violence. And what we have seen in the frauds, particularly from this particular area, is there is a very high incidence of domestic violence.
Okay.
Now, so these fraudsters are already married and they come into the UK, and quite often our organisation gets contacted by the wives back in Pakistan, Bangladesh and India saying, help, my husband is about to marry someone I've not consented to this. I don't know what to do, I've been abandoned, and so we get these desperate calls from these countries. But of course there's the other victim. There is the victim in the UK who doesn't know about the other wife,
Right. Okay.
So you end up with
even the wife,
two victims.
Supposed to be the wife here in the UK, probably don't even know about the other wife.
No, they don't know about the other wife. They just see money quite often going from their bank account to support the family back in Asia.
They come from. Okay.
So we're seeing a lot of that. In fact, 60% of the cases that we deal with, and we're dealing with about 1,000 cases a year, 60% involve bigamy or polygamy without consent.
Right.
Now, it also works the other way. Okay. So, for instance, a British citizen met a Pakistani man in the UK.
Okay.
They married in a registry office marriage, and he then turned around to her and said, I'm going to take another wife. She said, but I don't consent. We've got a legal British marriage. It's a monogamous marriage. I don't consent to this.
Okay.
But because of the way and anomalies of the law, he was able to marry another person without consent in the UK.
Even though this was legally married here in the UK.
Legally married
marriage ceremony.
Yeah. Because in the UK, the Islamic marriage is not legal, and many people do not realise that. If the Islamic marriage took place back in Pakistan or Bangladesh or India, it's legal.
Okay.
If it takes place in the UK, it is not. It is deemed by the law as a form of cohabitation.
Right. Okay.
And because it's a form of cohabitation, the woman has no rights. And it's been estimated that 80% of all marriages within the community...
Is that the woman who has no rights, is the woman who's actually married under the Nikah Nama ceremony?
Yeah, you have no rights.
No rights.
No rights at all. Okay. You can forget about any rights. You can go to the police and say, my husband's taken another wife, but actually, if the husband has married in the Nikah, I'm afraid you have no rights. It is as if he's having an affair.
Right.
It's as simple as that. And if you have not married your husband under the UK law, then you will lose everything. So there is an organisation which we're linked to called Register Our Marriages. Now, when you have loopholes like this between the law, this is where fraud can come in. And we're seeing a lot of people from...
when you say fraud, it's mainly the immigration fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to understand what's happening with migration within the UK. People talk about economic refugees, and they talk about students who are foreign nationals coming to train here. They talk about asylum seekers, They talk about refugees.
Yeah.
They don't talk about what we call the ne'er-do-wells, meaning
ne'er-do-wells,
the ones who are actually not up to any good. Now, simply,
where did the word ne'er-do-well come from?
It's an old English word to mean somebody of a bad character. Because of the lack of immigration checks carried out in the marriage immigration status, being that there is no criminal check, no marital check, no check of any qualifications that you may say that you have, because that would be looked at if you went, say, for a work permit or if you were a student. But in marriage, these aspects are not looked at. Marriage has become a very easy route for the ne'er-do-wells, the bad people, to come into the UK. Now, many years ago, well, actually not that many years ago, about 20 years ago, the British ne'er-do-wells, as in the white criminal underclass, were going to Spain, to places like Marbella, to run away from the police. Right? We've got Kenneth Noy, who's about to be go to an open prison now, who'd killed 2 people. He went off to Marbella. So everybody's used to this idea that bad people also travel to get away from their criminal past.
Right, okay.
You may travel to get away from war crimes. You may travel to get away from your terrorist past. You may travel to get away from a wife. And none of these things will be picked up in the spousal visa. So actually, when it comes down to it, when you marry a foreign national, you have to do your own checks. And I can't express this loud enough to people. The families and those who are marrying, you must ask for things that the Home Office does not ask for. You must ask for a single person affidavit. Because otherwise you could be marrying somebody who is already married.
Can I just stop you? With the Home Office applications, with the vigorous, information requested or required, the forms, some of these Home Office application forms for visas are, probably about 100 pages. So I would have thought that the Home Office would pick up on some of these fraudulent activities.
No. There is a very interesting paper that was written in 2015 after a parliamentary ombudsman investigation. It was called Home Office Failures Put Family in Danger. And they went through what were the actual checks that were being done on foreign nationals to come into the UK. And basically it's diddly squat. If you live in Canada or America or New Zealand, you will be checked. But there are no checks that are being carried out. In fact, it's very often not even a requirement of employers to do a criminal record check. So say you work for the NHS or education, there is no legal requisite to check the criminal past. And there's no requisite within the Home Office policy to check on whether a person has got another wife or not.
So the burden becomes...
The burden is on you and the families who are arranging the marriage to ascertain whether it's a fraud or not. Now, I think it's very important that anybody, from whatever colour, whatever nationality, starts with the premise that all people between foreign nationals and the UK are fraudsters. That is not to say that they are, but it is really important to start with the premise that this could be a fraudster. Because when you look at what's happening in migration, at the moment in the UK, you have got the old figures in 2010, an estimated 1.1 million illegal migrants. The paper came out a couple of months ago about the number of illegal migrants coming into the UK now, as an estimate by a former director of immigration enforcement, and he was saying 150,000 a year, right? So on top of the 1.1, 150,000 a year. Those people you will not know anything about. Nothing. There will be no record of them, right? So anybody, whether you meet them in the UK, like I did with my husband, I met him in the UK, but he was a foreign national, or whether you meet them abroad, or whether it's through an introducer, you must start with the premise that this can be a fraud.
And you must start with the premise.
Must start with the premise that you must go into this with your eyes wide open and understand the value of that passport. Now, as migration laws have tightened, it has become harder to get into the UK. So people who are your ne'er-do-wells are going to try and find the loopholes. So they're going to use the NICA loopholes. That's what they do. They're going to use false passports. They're going to use fake qualifications. They're going to use fake identities. They're going to hide their criminal past. And they are going to target a woman. Now, it might be, of course, that the family are the ones who are arranging the marriage. And this is why it's so important that everyone is aware of what is actually going on. Because the family have got to start with the premise this could be a fraud, because the consequences are so far-reaching. Now, let me describe some real cases.
How can they check? Nobody's set out to, they're not investigators. They're not,
Well, hire one.
The ability to
hire one. Hire one. I mean,
this is the life you're playing with. Therefore, do your check.
You could destroy your daughter's life by making a wrong choice if you don't do the homework. And you have to understand that the online romance scamming has got out of control. And it's exactly the same with the matrimonial sites that have come up.
Is that the dating sites, the online dating sites?
The online dating sites,
so
huge amount of
fraudsters are targeting through the dating sites as well.
The dating sites and the matrimonial sites that are set up. So false profiles are being used, and it has become epidemic. If you want to understand more about how the online side works, go onto the Action Fraud website and understand how that is actually taken off as a life of its own. But as more people are trying to get into the UK, and the UK is trying to stop people from getting into the UK, the ne'er-do-wells will find a way. And the easiest way as it stands at the moment is marriage. And everyone needs to be aware of this. Now, let me give you some examples of the terrible situations that can arise.
Can I just I just want to make one point. Although the Home Office or the British government are trying to stop people coming in, it's not a bad thing for someone who genuinely wants to come in. They're doctors, engineers, and genuine marriages are happening as well. There is no problem. Everybody has a right to have a better life. It's the fraudsters. It's the fraudsters. The ne'er-do-wells that we are concerned about.
We are, because they are fraudsters. They are con men and con women, and they will destroy your life. Now,
they're not good for anyone.
No. I mean, one of the biggest targets at the moment are doctors. And
are we talking about British doctors?
British doctors.
They're praised.
British doctors who come from the Asian heritage, who have gone to a matrimonial site, a dating site, an introducer, or their family has heard of somebody through a friend, and they are meeting women, and the women are married and they're brought over to the UK. And then the woman has absolutely no intention of staying in the UK.
So not only men, we were sort of like thinking, like a lot of ne'er-do men targeting, British women, but we have women
women
targeting our British
and
men.
This is the growth
for immigration visa
this is
purposes.
The growth area at the moment.
Unbelievable.
It's been recognised in the Home Office Annual National Threat Assessment. Yeah. We did a report where we were included in by the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, called the Settlement Casework Report. We personally estimate that 50% of all those claiming domestic violence having occurred to stay in the UK, up to 50% could be false. So let me go back a bit.
About the doctor.
Because we missed out the bit with the doctors. You see, because the doctors they marry these women quite often. The women may have no intention of staying. They may not consummate the marriage. They may already have a boyfriend in the UK. They may have a husband or a boyfriend back home, but they've come over here because they want to be in the UK, but they don't want to be married.
They want to be the UK. They want to settle here in the UK for a better life, but not for the purpose of having a life with the person they
No.
Yeah,
they come in. I mean, to the extent that we know of cases whereby when the husband has finally gone through the Google history, before they've even come into the UK, they have gone through all the ways of staying in the UK using a false allegation of domestic violence.
Right. Okay. So they're prepared.
They're prepared. they are totally prepared on how to use it. So they come in, and this poor doctor, and I'm going to keep using the examples of doctors because
they're rich.
They're rich, and that's why they're targeted.
Rich men,
and
women.
Rich men, So the women come in. They've targeted these rich people.
Can we say they're gold diggers then?
They're gold diggers, yeah. They then make a false allegation of domestic violence.
Yeah.
The first the husband will know about it is when the police come knocking at their door.
Okay.
And they are arrested, and they are held in cells, and they are interviewed, and they will be suspended by the GMC whilst they're pending investigation.
Okay.
So we had 4 this year, right, where the doctors had been targeted, suspended by
4 cases of doctors.
4 cases of doctors suspended by the GMC. Their reputation in tatters, their standing in the community in tatters, their mental health destroyed, having been arrested. In all cases, they were cleared before it went to trial, right? But that is what is happening, because all that the women are doing is saying, domestic violence, that means I can get a domestic violence visa concession. That gives me 3 months to stay in the UK, and then I can get my indefinite leave to remain without having to stay in a marriage for 2.5 years. Now, we all know that domestic...
Is it that easy?
Yeah, absolutely. And they get free legal aid to support it. In the report that came out by the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, it was found out that the Home Office, in about 50% of the cases, was not even verifying with the police that there had been an allegation of domestic violence.
Right,
it was basically being rubber stamped. Now, this loophole is being closed down.
Okay.
And what upsets me is that there are lots of women who are being domestically abused, and these ne'er-do-wells, these fraudsters, are jeopardizing the real cases. Real cases. So women are targeting, and it's usually, as I said, the more financially well-off men to marry, and then they're divorcing, and they are using the false allegation of domestic violence to actually get more money from their husbands.
What, under the divorce settlement?
Under the divorce settlement. Yeah. Under the divorce settlement.
Absolutely.
Right. Now let's turn it to what the men are doing. Now, the men, quite often, they have no intention of remaining married either. It's just about coming into the UK. It is just about getting as much money as possible from their wife. So we know...
After they get the visas.
After they get the visas.
Indefinite leave to remain.
Yes.
It's not the end.
Yeah.
More money-making scheme.
More money. And of course, the longer you stay married, the more money you get from the divorce. So some of these frauds go on for 10 years, you know, because it's all about getting your citizenship and as much money as possible until it all unwinds that they're already married, or they've gone back home and married somebody else, or they're not even the identity that they purported to be. Now, we had a case last year which was horrendous. Her husband turned out to have 4 British identities in different names, and it meant that her passport didn't match with the marriage certificate, and of course he had a wife back home as well, and you know,
back
there was
from where he originates from.
Yeah, so a huge cesspit of fraud had gone on with fake identities. So the men are coming over with the fake identities. The fake identities are now so good, they are very hard to be detected, even by the police and Home Office.
Detectors that can easily detect for false papers.
I
thought this was the olden days where you can't actually detect false papers.
You can travel on these fake passports. It's happening all the time. Only last week there was a story of the Iranian people trafficking ring that they had just uncovered in England and Spain, whereby 200 or more had come in last year using false passports and identity. So so these identities can be to their qualifications. So imagine the situation: a family thinks, "Oh, this is an eligible man. He's got all these qualifications. He's got and he wants to do his masters, and he's a businessman, and he owns his own house. Oh, fantastic! This is a good
cultural heritage.
Yeah. What a good catch!" And then in this, one particular case, the woman from the UK was persuaded to go over to see him, and she was taken to this very large luxury house, and she thought, "Oh gosh, he is a businessman. Oh, this is really good."
In the UK or in
this one was in Pakistan, I think.
Right.
Although we've had another exactly the same in Bangladesh, whereby they've gone back, been taken to properties, and then it's uncovered once they get into the UK that actually they've never ever got a single qualification, because they haven't even gone past primary school, that the house had been rented for the purpose by the hour.
Right, for the purpose of gaining a British bride or
to get the British bride, And so suddenly the wives here are going, "Well, gosh, this guy, he's not the age I thought he was. He's not got any qualifications. He's not got any wealth. He's not a businessman. And I'm married to him. And oh dear, I've got the house. And in the divorce, he's going to take my property." And that's exactly what happens.
And it's very difficult to actually fight these.
It is difficult unless you can prove fraud.
And how easy is that?
There is the Fraud Act 2006, Section 2. It is not easy to get the police to investigate. Our experience has been that because this whole issue of, is it a Home Office issue, is it a police issue, we've had to take questions in Parliament as to whose issue it actually is to investigate. So it's still difficult, but it must be reported, because if you report it to the Home Office, they collect a file on that person.
They are aware of these
They're
things.
aware of it.
The more they collect, the more they can say, "Well, it's happening. We must do something about it." So it's common sense to report it either ways. One other thing I wanted to sort of talk to you about is, all else fails. Do they use children then?
I mean, this is a growth industry. It's to do with the Human Rights Act. Now, many of these fraudsters, they get caught out. But what they want to do is to have a child, which will mean that they feel that they won't get kicked out, because they'll be able to implement the Human Rights Act to a family life.
Parent of a British child.
So many women that I talk to, they've married a man, they've got pregnant within a short time, the man has run away. And only to reappear 2 or 3 years later to try and get child access, because immigration are after them. So they're then going to use their human rights to stay in the UK.
Legalise.
And this is what we call an anchor child. The child has been sired only for the purpose to remain in the UK. And the custody battles that happen have to be seen to be believed. I've had the terrible experience of being in the family court whereby the aspects of the fraud and the immigration would not be taken into consideration.
Right.
And they just looked at it, that the father had
Parental
rights.
responsibilities, 50-50, I suppose, both
And
parents.
then we get what's called the Gordian knot happening, which is the Home Office is waiting on the family courts to make a decision. The family courts is waiting for the Home Office to make a decision. And so the cases drag on and drag on and drag on.
What would be your message? I mean, you've told us, these stories, which are obviously, it's happening every day.
Every single day we get calls.
What would be your message to the people or the big victims or potential victims?
Okay, my first message I've already said, which is start off on the premise that they're all fraudsters, and then you will not make a mistake. Okay. So you check with the single person status, you get an affidavit of that. Vitally important, because polygamy is rife. Okay. Polygamy without consent is rife. Bigamy is rife. 60% of our cases involve those two aspects. So get that affidavit of single person status. Prenup is another very, very important thing to do.
Under the family law.
Yep.
Okay.
Also avoid, where possible, marrying abroad because of the different laws that exist. At least if you marry on home soil here in the UK, then the jurisdiction aspects of where crimes take place, it puts the focus very much here, which means you'll get more chance of doing something, getting something done by the police and the Home Office if it's happened here. Okay. If it's happened abroad, you won't. I would say if they have said to you in the past that they've already got a marriage, but they're separated and the wife's in agreement for them to take another wife, ask for a certificate from the Arbitration Council, so that you can be certain that the wife has consented to this other marriage. Okay. Because what we're seeing is that they're not, which is why we're getting the phone calls from abroad. Register any marriages in the UK, make it all fall under the UK law. Okay. If you have any suspicions, if you're being abused physically or coercively, report immediately. Right. Okay. Report to the police and report to the Home Office. They may not do anything about it, but you need to start building up the evidence of what is going on. Too often I come across cases whereby they've been seriously physically abused. Right. I mean, one woman had her amniotic sac ruptured by her husband, who was a fraudster, who she'd met in the UK. But no record of that existed at the police station or with the Home Office. Right, so you must start thinking, if there is a possibility that this is a fraud, do not be afraid, report it. Even if you decide not to go forward with a prosecution, it's vital to have it recorded somewhere that you did in fact.
Whatever the issue. Okay, there's, seek help.
Yeah.
Seek help before you lose everything, basically. Yeah. Because this is England. Help and advice is available.
Register the marriages, I think we've mentioned. I'm just trying to think what else there was that I had. Yes, if they say they're attending college in the UK, ask for proof. And this is something very simple that can be done.
Yeah.
And many of the fraudsters we are coming across have gone to something called a bogus college. It doesn't exist. They dropped out within the first couple of months of a real college because their qualifications were fake, and obviously they couldn't keep up with the coursework, so they've had to drop out, or they've never had any intention of attending. They've always wanted to go and work.
Right.
So get the proof that they are attending the college and what course it is they are attending.
The burden is on you.
The
Make
burden
sure
is
you
on
do all
you.
the necessary checks, because it's your life you're playing with.
Yes.
And you want a happy life, not a miserable life.
Absolutely.
Basically.
And if all else fails and you're caught in that situation, call us.
Yeah.
If you want to just talk it through with people who have seen it all before, and maybe you've just got a question mark in your head, just talk to us. We can put you in touch with people from your community who have been through the same story as yourself, or what might well be happening to you, and give you pointers on how to look deeper.
Okay.
So call our organisation, email us, look at our website, wealth of information there. But at the first sign that something is not right, go and seek help.
Right.
Talk to us.
Kim, thank you very much for joining. We've come to the end of the show. I hope you found the information valuable. Should you do need help and assistance, well, I'm sure you will need help and assistance. If you do, please do email us on let's talk about it at lb24.tv. That's let's talk about it at lb24.tv. Until next time, goodbye.